Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, coming at you from that low-rent Star Cruiser. I don't even remember the name of it, but it's definitely not that super nice one that's just about to launch. I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is every single week, esteemed Jedi Master John Mills.
You know, it was really kind of awkward to pull up to the spaceport and see a Star Cruiser that looked actually just like a giant concrete building. I'd never seen that aesthetic before. It was odd, but, you know,
it's
bold
very
choices.
Boxy. Yeah.
You know, you have to embrace new design aesthetics for starships nowadays.
Yeah.
And, the concrete warehouse look, I mean, you know, it's got its place, I guess. You know, maybe most at home in the Techno Union, because they don't care as much about aesthetics.
It's true.
Right?
It's true. And in space, I mean, you know, there's no need for aerodynamics or really, in the end, good design. Why does that even matter?
No, you know, so long as the inside of the ship is nice and sparkly, then
exactly.
You know, that's good. That's fine.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Well, we are excited to be here. We would encourage you to find us on social media. You can find us under @TheJediMasters on Twitter, where you can find the entire network @Join Nerd Party. We're also on Instagram @TheNerdParty. We've got thenerdparty.com, where you can find all of the different shows we're doing. Of course, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and we would appreciate a star review and a written review over on Apple Podcasts. Please do help us grow. Help more people find the show. And make sure you're subscribed to the show. That way you get the episodes as soon as they drop. And so those are all the places that you could find us. And John, you know, I was inspired to ask you this question in light of something that I had finally gotten a chance to do this last week. And I had waited until it was completed. And I read the War of the Bounty Hunters series there in the comics. And, of course, a big deal, Crimson Dawn and Kira come back. And I was thinking to myself, you know, obviously it's been a big push with fans on Twitter calling for Solo 2 to make Solo 2 happen. And, of course, we're 100% behind that idea. And, of course, I think we're both of a mind that, well, really, this could be a great trilogy. And so I was wanting to know from you and to talk about with you, what would you like to see in Solo sequels?
That is a great question. And one that I'm legitimately surprised we haven't hit on, because we both love Solo: A Star Wars Story. I've loved it since the first viewing, became an evangelist for the movie. I think it's everything about Star Wars. It's a giant love letter to the fans while being hugely accessible to outside audiences. I've yet to encounter anybody who actually disliked the movie, and that is a huge accomplishment in today's fractured market. In terms of what I'd want to see in a sequel, that's a loaded question, right? Because as much as I want to see one, I'm not optimistic that I'll get one. And I know that seems, especially in the era of nobody thought that we would get Zack Snyder's Justice League. Nobody thought that there would be hints that possibly there's some sort of restoration of the Snyderverse at work. Those sorts of things have given all of us hope that a miracle can happen, that they're so starved for content we could get it. The first thing I want to throw out there on the table, and I actually want to get your read on this, because I want to go, you know, point by point with the stuff that I have in my head. One of the things I would want in the second one is I would want Han to lose the ship back to Lando. Whether at the midway point or at the end, I want Han to lose the Falcon again in another card game to Lando, setting up that in the third one is the time he finally wins the card game, and have him do something truly sneaky that would be the thing that Lando would hold a grudge about when they see each other at Cloud City. That's where my mind goes with that stuff. What do you think about? I mean, I don't know if I've ever thrown that out there before, that I would want to see the Falcon continue to change hands through the second one and the third one so that it's not so neatly wrapped up at the end of the first one. I think that'd be a nice reversal of expectation.
That is interesting. Very interesting, because not something that I would have thought of. And also, I'm not sure quite how I feel about it. I don't know. I'm of two minds. One, I think it could make an interesting story, just because it does add more of the kind of rivalry between them. And I think that it's an interesting question because with those two characters, it might add even more when they meet each other again on, Bespin. Where you're not quite sure how, and it could also be interesting because of that, because it creates more tension in the sense of he's not really sure if it's his friend, and so now I don't know if I think that he should have done anything completely underhanded Han to win the Falcon back the final time, but I do think I think maybe I'm talking myself into this being a good idea in reference to their meeting on Bespin.
Han wouldn't cheat. Han never cheats.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say underhanded. I said sneaky. Like one of those things where he talks Lando into a bet that Lando doesn't realize he didn't pay close enough attention to what the condition of the bet was. So Lando winds up thinking he won at the end, but the condition was that Han got the ship. And that would be the thing that would, that would really cheese Lando off, where it would be like, I never want to see you again. You jackass. How dare you? Lando would be more mad about the fact that Han had outthought him than he would be even about losing the ship. And also having it change hands a couple of times gives more possible context to Lando's line, because he says, that ship saved my life a couple of times. Yeah, I'm not getting the exact line, but he basically says that on Bespin. He's lauding the Falcon, talking about how it had saved his life. And having it change hands gives more possibility for Lando having adventures in between. I mean, that might even be an interesting thing for the second one, to be that Han has to go bail out Lando, and that sets up the exchange of the ship in some way as well, because I would like to see, of course, everybody wants to see Lando come back in the second one. Everybody wants to see Kira come back. It's very feasible that Lando would get himself into trouble with Kira, and we don't even need to have Kira and Han meet. It can just be even one of those things where it's like a Kirk and Khan thing almost. Where they never actually share the stage in Star Trek II, but they're working at cross purposes with each other. And so, and then you could set up just a really beautiful moment at the end where there's like a fleeting glance where they almost have that moment, but then whatever, pulls them apart. And that way you have Han thinks he's working toward Kira, and then she slips away again, and it just hurts even more that second time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's really interesting. And especially since one of the things that would be fascinating about this whole thing, and, with Crimson Dawn, obviously, we know, Maul, something happens. And they go quiet rather quickly, it seems like, I guess, after Solo. And something happens with Maul. And I think that's the thing to me that creates a really interesting story there, especially on the Crimson Dawn side, is what is it that happens there that traps Maul on Malachor, and what is it then that, and does basically, because the way the comics frame this is that they have been kind of almost in hiding for a long time until they kind of reemerge here right after Empire Strikes Back. And it would be fascinating is that does Kira sensed that something's off with Maul, and so basically she's pulling a foundation where she's setting them up to be able to reemerge at a later time. And so that's part of the story, is her trying to do this without Maul realizing. So, of course, she doesn't end up dead. And at the same time, still trying to do the jobs that Maul is sending her on and all of these kind of things. And so there's this power struggle that's going on that is this almost Cold War that's happening in, Crimson Dawn, which, Maul is not too dissatisfied with, because he's used to that dynamic with the Sith, and so he thinks he's completely in control. And then to me, that creates a really interesting story.
It does. I think that what we both have here is a desire to see more of Kira, desire to see more of Lando. Maul playing into it. I like this idea of showing how he gets stranded. It could be something as simple as, if you want to tie all of this together, Lando is being used for some sort of... I mean, we both know that John Kasdan is a huge Indiana Jones fan.
Mm-hmm.
Have him write his indie movie, but make it solo, so that they're basically, Maul has turned, and the entire efforts of Crimson Dawn toward capturing some sort of artifact, which ties into sequel trilogy stuff with the fascination with artifacts, and that's also been hinted at in the Lando comic.
Sure, yeah,
not hinted at, but straight up embraced.
Yep. Straight up shown, yeah.
So you have Maul going after an artifact, and Kira uses the opportunity to strand Maul. Han saves Lando, who's somehow involved. Kira goes away, and she even says at some point, I have to go into hiding. She gets the artifact, and she's like, there are people worse than Maul that are going to be looking for this. I have to get out of here.
Yep.
So,
because she's aware, too,
right,
of other Sith being around because of Maul. So I like that.
Well, yes. I mean, this is the trickiest thing, though. I have these obvious wants for the sequel. Do you think this winds up playing for a broader audience, like my wife or kids or something like that? Or does this run the risk? Does a Solo 2 run the real risk of being strictly a fan service type of project? Which, of course, everybody would instantly poop all over and talk about how blah, blah. Like, the complaints would be deafening. It would be as if a million nerd voices cried out and were never silenced on Twitter.
I think what you want to do in this situation is that what you want to do is you want to get Filoni involved in the story here so that we are connecting correctly with everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that makes this work, right? Because I think obviously The Mandalorian shows us we can play around without having any Jedi really, or, tons of characters that are everybody's that they know, and still do very, very well.
True.
And so what you need there is then just like a story that really kind of helps make the right connections, and make this really something to where, like you said, it can't be then fun. And, I think Solo had that already, in the sense that they had created a story that was fun. It had the right connections. There were just a lot of other issues that happened with that movie that were, and many of them out of control of the actual story of the movie itself, right?
Right. Oh, the fact that the movie got made at all is a miracle.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that if you do that and you do that well, I think it can overcome that just being something that's just for the fans. But I also want to say that I think studios sometimes these days, and I think I have to praise Marvel for this. They just started making fans do stuff, right? And fans did it, and they responded, right? For all of those years, I would say all the way through, and put it in the Endgame saga. In that era, Marvel fans were willing to do basically anything that Marvel asked them to do. And they just started making movies for the fans where if you didn't see all the movies, you were kind of screwed, right? And so, and they just assumed that as well. So on the other side of the aisle, right, DC stopped making movies for the fans and started making movies that they thought you should watch and that they thought you wanted, instead of just giving the fans that were already there what they wanted.
Right.
And so
yes.
For Star Wars here, well, I guess all of that to say is I don't think it's a bad thing to make a movie for the fans. Because if you make a good movie for the fans, they'll see it, and then they're going to tell everybody else to go see it as well, right? And so you make it for that built-in audience. You make it so that they want to tell other people about it. And I think that's the place you just need to start to be comfortable with, because, again, I do think that that's also the lesson that we learned from The Mandalorian. You make it for the fans, but you've made it in a way that everybody else likes it too, right?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's
So-
exactly what I would want them to do. I think that if they embrace the idea of doing a Solo 2 the way that they make The Mandalorian and just release it on streaming, much lower risk, much higher profile, and I think to your point about Marvel, I think Marvel has now accepted their fate of only being for the fans who are still dedicated to them at this point. The normies just don't care about Marvel the way that they used to. And that's because Marvel can no longer stake a claim at being the event, right? And so...
Well, we record this before Spider-Man No Way Home comes out, and I've already heard that the ticket sales for that are off the charts, insane.
Okay,
so
good.
I'm just saying, like, so yeah. But I do.
Fair enough.
Cede your point. I understand what you're saying in the sense that as we record this, 2021, they haven't been gangbusters as they had been in previous years.
Right.
So I definitely believe that.
Well,
It's different than it used to be.
Well, I would even say you look at something like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. What's really there for anybody to work with who isn't already a Marvel devotee? Is there anything there for them to really work with? No, this is for the fans sort of thing. And so I think the trick here is that I would come at it from, just sort of that different angle of if you're releasing it straight to streaming, or you're viewing it from a merchandise sales, which I don't know. I mean, all that's gone off the rails lately. I don't know what's going on with toy sales and stuff like that. Like Star Wars is, it used to be so apparent to me how everything worked, and now it's just this black box that I just cannot see into. It's so bizarre how hard it is to find the toys on the shelves nowadays. Like it's just so weird. I don't know what happened.
Which part of that is other issues, but yes,
sure.
Even before that, I was having those problems where I lived. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but anyway, I do think streaming offers some sort of I mean, if you can make Red Notice, and Red Notice is a perfectly fine movie, nobody's going to remember even having seen it in 12 months.
Sure.
But it passes the time. So long as you can make Solo 2 something with enough excitement that it passes the time, that somebody will watch it from beginning to finish, and even if they didn't love it, even if the person who doesn't get every reference, oh, Maul's stranded here, oh, this is where Lando does this, oh, Kira is this, even if they don't get all of those pieces in place, they still had a good enough time. And I think that's what Solo had going for it.
Right.
Is it wasn't trying to do anything more than be so much fun that you just wanted to be there with it. Mm-hmm. And even though, the miss is she doesn't get 50% of the references, and the 50% she does get is because she made the bad choice to marry me, and so she's heard all of this stuff nonstop. it's the just enough principle, I guess. And
Yep.
I would say though that a real key piece of it that everybody would overlook is you got to get John Powell back for the score. I don't want anybody else on the score for this. I don't even want Hans Zimmer. I don't even want
No.
I want anybody else. I want John Powell on this because he's the guy that nailed it. He's the first guy, first composer that I've heard since the original trilogy. That's a non-John Williams guy because we have Joel McNeely and then we have John Powell. John Powell got right in the lane, and even the sequel trilogy stuff we've talked about those scores. Even those don't have the same life to them. This felt like a 1970s score, and that's why I need John Powell to come back. I need him to come back.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that 100%. Like, I would love it if he came back. I think, he's 100% phenomenal in what he does. I think he does such great work, and I loved it. We've definitely talked about that score and how much we both love it. So, I think that that's definitely a key to it being successful. The movie and the feel of the movie and all of that involved. The thing that we haven't talked about, but I do think is actually really important here is that I think one of the things that, I was also really struck by this War of the Bounty Hunters ideas is that this world of playing with the Star Wars underworld is so fun to be in. And the thing that really struck me was seeing all of these different factions, seeing these different bounty hunters, seeing the Hutts and these different organizations like Black Sun and all of that. I think that that's a really great and vibrant place for Star Wars to play in. And in all honesty, it, like you said, do you do this on Disney Plus, kind of thing. And to me, this makes for a perfect series. And the hard part is honestly, though, is that can you get the people back? Can you get Emilia Clarke to come back? And can you get Aaron Allreich back? I mean, right now, I don't see them doing a lot of things. So I feel like if you give them a show with the right script, you could do great. And honestly, this seems like a perfect place to do two seasons, 8-9 episodes each, and you've just got an incredible milieu to play in. I mean, that's the thing that I don't understand is why when you're looking for places to play and you're looking for ways to play in them, like this feels like if you do a trilogy of it becomes a trilogy of movies or it becomes a Disney Plus thing, it also feels like a perfect place to also help connect to what you'd see in things like The Mandalorian.
Yes.
And so I just feel like that's the thing that makes this so, rife with possibility.
I'll throw two last things in here. The first one is something that I think we're overlooking, and I don't know whether he would come into play in Solo 2 or would hold off on him until Solo 3, but Boba Fett is in play during this time period.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need to take his helmet off.
Right.
And you can have some sort of incident happen that explains why he really wants to catch Solo in The Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, why? And even have something set up where Jabba holds him back at one point, where Boba Fett's like, I can't let this stand. I got to take this guy out. And Jabba's like, no, he's too good an earner for me. And then Solo screws up, and Jabba's like, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, and so after A New Hope, he's like, yeah, the boy's lost his last chance. Go get him.
Sure.
But also, let's take it for a given that Ron Howard either chooses not to direct or what have you. Who do you want in that director's chair? Who would you nominate immediately?
I think that the characters that I think that the people that have already proven themselves as directors on The Mandalorian would be excellent choices. I think any of them would be able to do this. And I know obviously Deborah Chow is doing the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but I think somebody like her, she did a really good job with the emotion. I felt like in episodes like The Sin, and so she really stuck out to me. I believe it's Rick Fumiyawa, if I said his last name wrong, I really apologize. Phenomenal director. I think his visual language was astounding, in especially that second episode, with the Mudhorn fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would be phenomenal as well. But seriously, I mean, I think just about anybody who was involved with directing in The Mandalorian has proven themselves to be able to play in this milieu of Star Wars very well, and would be fantastic. Like I think that would be my absolute best. I can't think of anybody else who has proven themselves to understand Star Wars, to get Star Wars, and to be able to give it to us on screen in a way that's immediately recognizable for us and accessible for everyone. So yeah, I mean that's where I'm going to go. Does anybody jump out? Is there anybody I'm not thinking of, or somebody you're thinking of that just immediately does it for you?
There's a part of me that wants to say Bryce Dallas Howard, just because you have Ron Howard, Bryce Dallas Howard. It's like, well, she was trained by the same school of directorial thought that trained her father, who studied basically under, like there's sort of like a direct line of succession there in my brain. Sure. I also think it would be really cute. It would probably be the first time, I think, that you would ever have two movies directed by a father than a daughter. So they could really play up that angle. But I do think that, because she did, she has directed an episode of the Book of Boba Fett, which of course we haven't seen yet, but we will soon. And I know that she did The Heiress, which I thought was a really good episode of The Mandalorian, that I would have liked to, that right there, even more than Sanctuary, because I thought Sanctuary was a really well done episode. Mm-hmm. Sure. But I think The Heiress was, because that was the Water Planet one.
It's phenomenal. That was a great episode.
Yeah, and the action was perfectly done. Like, there were so many things that were so well done in that episode, and that got so many emotional beats right. Like, it was just the perfect mix of everything. And it's like, I would probably lean toward her, but I don't think, to your point, that you could make a bad choice if you pulled from the stable of directors who have worked with the material before.
Yeah. And I think it's just one of the things where they've all done such a great job. But the thing I like about them all is that they've played in this type of universe. Right. In the sense of, like, they've played in the Underworld universe already. And I think that's the thing that makes them stand out for me as a choice. So, and in all honesty, I do think it would be actually kind of cool for, like you said, with the idea of Bryce Dallas Howard coming in and continuing what her father had, done and created. I think that would be really neat, and I think, Ron Howard is one of the big reasons why that film ended up working in the first place, because I think he came in with a real vision and he gave it, I would call it a real Lucasian flair.
So I think absolutely no small part of that is the fact that he does sort of come from the Lucas school, which is
true. Yeah.
Just to give where my brain goes with that is when Steven Spielberg directed Raiders of the Lost Ark, He considered it a point of pride that he was going to direct that movie as fast as possible, just to show Lucas that he wasn't the only one that could torch through a production and get it done. Because Lucas is well known for being hyper efficient with everything.
Yes.
And so I think that, you know, and I think actually training on episodes of The Mandalorian, not to belabor the point or anything, but you're dealing with something where you have high pressure, you have story beat demands, and you still have to deliver something that doesn't feel like just a bullet point, which is, I mean, honestly, that's what killed so many Marvel movies throughout the second and third phase, where it was like bullet point movie. And it's like, well, not second phase so much, but third phase definitely.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think this is the thing that's just so exciting for me, and just this thought process is that, you know, the beauty of The Mandalorian, I think, is that it did show us something that I think that there were many people that wanted this, right? They wanted the opportunity to play with Star Wars characters, the Star Wars universe, in a way that we really hadn't seen before, where there weren't a lot of Jedi influences. And, you know, I think that the beauty of this is it really has the ability to become something like the Godfather type trilogy or type of series for the Star Wars universe, right? It can, I do think that this is the place to me where you could be just slightly darker than some of the other things we've seen in Star Wars. Now, I don't mean I want you know, full nudity and all that kind of, lots of bad language. That's not what I mean. But just give it like an edge to it, right? And I think that would be great. And at the same time, because you have Han, because you have Chewie, because you have Lando in there, because you have characters like Kira and all that kind of stuff, I think you can be have a little bit more of an edge to it, just a slight edge, right? And I think that's fun. And again, it just, what it does is creates this nice feel for that series. And I think part of that is that, you know, the Solo movie has a nice edge to it, you know, with the characters, with the amorality of these characters and those kind of things. You know, I think it's great. And I would just love to see all of that play out. And I think the other part of it is that I really liked all of the actors involved. And I think that's the thing, is that I want them back. You know, it is the way that I know that many people feel about the sequel characters, where they liked those characters and they want to see them back. These Solo characters, so well cast, so well done, and I just want them back in another movie, whatever it is. I just want them back. So, you know, is that too much to ask? That's my Christmas wish.
And, you know, it's Christmas, Theo. It's the time of miracles. For all we know, we're going to get an announcement before the end of the year. But what I want you to announce to everybody is where they can find you online, out in the wilds of the internet.
Well, yes. Of course, you could find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. So whether that's Twitter or Vero or Instagram, all those places, even Letterboxd, you can find me. You can also find me here on the network with a Finnish show. I did Owl Post with Drea Kaufman as we talked about Harry Potter. We did every single chapter of that series, one chapter at a time, so I hope you'll check that out. Over on the TFM network, you can also find me doing the 602 Club, which is a general geek show where we talk about all of the fandoms that we love, because there are just so many fandoms out there to give love to. And you also find some bonus shows that John Mills and I do together, like Snyder Cuts or Assembling Avengers, and those are great. So, and it's all in the same feed. So like you subscribe to 602 Club, you get all of those shows. You can also find me over there doing 3 more shows. I'm doing The Orb, Warp 5, and Literary Treks. The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Warp 5 is about Star Trek Enterprise. And Literary Treks is about the books and the comics of Star Trek. Now, John, I'm exhausted after that extensive list, and so I need a nap. Where can people find you?
I'm going to make it short and still painful. for them, where you can find me as Kessel Junkie online, KESSELJUNKIE. Nobody wants to connect on Twitter, so connect with me over on Letterboxd, where I have a lot of fun. And you can find me, as Matt mentioned, over co-hosting Assembling Avengers, Snyder Cuts, appearing occasionally over on the 602 Club over on the TFM network, but also here on the Nerd Party. You can find me as part of a show called House Lights, where we look at the work of directors, you know what? We look at the work of directors. Go on over and check the show out, please. We have a lot of fun with it. It's a lot of fun. I do it with Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser. We have a great time. So, but with all of that preamble, that's all just to build to this point where I say, Master Rushing, I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.